StormWatch number 14, written by Peter Milligan, art by Will Conrad and Cliff Richards. Last issue we left off with the demon Etrigan being summoned in London and seemingly killing Midnighter. And this issue picks up basically in that same spot where Apollo's like, you killed him. Why'd you gotta do that? And Etrigan's like, oh, well, I did it because it makes you feel sad, and that's pretty much all I do anything for. And Etrigan immediately tries to take off and be like, yes, I'm going to take over this world. Also, have you noticed I'm a bit of a poet? I'm not going to try to do the rhymes, but regardless, he's rhyming a lot of the time here. But as he starts to take off, he gets a bit dizzy, crashes down the earth, and he's just like, okay, maybe I'm not at full strength yet, but don't you laugh at me. How dare you laugh at me? And he starts trying to spit out his fire, and it doesn't quite work. And he's like, okay, something's definitely wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. But regardless, I just will still smite you. And Apollo now has switched from grief to anger as he unleashes a big blast at Etrigan. And Etrigan's like, oh, wow, that's like really hot. Like layer of hell level of hot. So if I wasn't a demon, I wouldn't be able to deal with that. And we get the whole backstory from Etrigan's perspective of how he led a revolt against Lucifer. Lucifer knew it was going to happen and just wanted to humiliate Etrigan, so he did it anyway. And then cursed him by getting into a deal with Merlin to have him bond to a human, aka Jason Blood. That's a whole thing. So then he was buried somehow. It literally just says, like, all the things that happened leading up to Demon Knights, then the events of the book Demon Knights, and then, quote, finally someone tricked me again and incarcerated me below ground. So yeah, that happened. So anyway, Etrigan and Apollo are getting ready to fight. Apollo's like, no, I shouldn't have used such a blast, so much energy, and all those bystanders nearby. And finally Etrigan's enough power that he's able to unleash the Hellfire Blast at Apollo. Apollo puts up a shield. Meanwhile, the kid who summoned Etrigan last issue is still, like, around, and he's like, geez, I summoned a demon. Oh, gosh, this is all my fault. Then, as Apollo's doing, like, a beam struggle thing with Etrigan, Midnighter comes too, and he's like, geez, all right, what's going on now? And Apollo's like, you're alive! And immediately gets blasted because he got distracted. So then Etrigan's like, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and attack. Gosh, something's messing with my head. And it turns out the other members of StormWatch all come in. And they're all getting ready to fight. And this is like, all right, does anybody know who this guy is? And it's like, nope, no idea. But I'm asking the city. And that's Jack Hawksmoor asking. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's Etrigan. He used to work with Demon Knights. Madame Xanadu imprisoned him underground here, and it's like, oh, cool. Does he know that Madame Xanadu did it? And it's like, not yet, but it's probably going to bubble up to the surface at some point. It's like, hey, by the way, StormWatch was once called Demon Knights, right? And it's like, yeah, it was centuries ago. Why? It's like, well, I think this might be our oldest possible foe, so that's an issue. So then we cut over to Avalon, aka the realm of the Shadow Lords. And remember last issue that Harry, what's-his-face, the bad guy from like the first arc, he was going to impersonate one of the Shadow Lords and basically use it to rule Stormwatch. And so he's doing that now. He shows up in front of the other Shadow Lords and he's like, behold, I am your lost brother. I was kept in like a Mayan thing, but regardless, I've come to my senses that we messed up severely with how we run Stormwatch. Allow me to educate you. So anyway, back to the fight. We see that they're throwing half of London at him. And Midnighter and Apollo flirt for a little bit, just being like, oh, hey, I'm so glad you're safe. And I'm glad you're safe, too. Wow, it's like we both care about each other. And then during the fight, Engineer calls up Jenny and is just like, Jenny, I need you to do some magic hoo-ha quantum thing in order to stop anybody from seeing us literally tearing up London. And she's like, well, I can make like a bubble of dark radiation. And Engineer's like, cool, do it. And he's like, but it'll cause like birth defects and cancer and all the people around. And Engineer's like, I genuinely don't care. Secrecy is the number one priority. Do it. And so she makes the bubble. And they all start fighting in it. And Midnighter reveals that his powers don't work, like his powers of like prediction or whatever, on magical entities, but he's still able to land some solid punches on Etrigan as long as he's thinking about it. And then Jenny just keeps on complaining, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And Engineer's like, suck it up, Buttercup. So at that point, Jack and Midnighter start going towards Etrigan. Etrigan sees the kid who summoned him and just be like, oh, well, because of some magical rules, the kid who summoned me, I'm able to possess his body. So I'm just going to do that. And so he jumps into the kid's body, takes off. Nobody even notices that he did that. But they're like, all right, well, he's gone. Jenny lets down the bubble because she's like, I don't even care if you're angry at me. Like, that was bad. That was something we shouldn't have done. And engineer starts looking through the files for Etrigan. And she's like, that's weird. I'm coming across locked files. I've literally never seen a locked file before. And she looks over towards Midnighter and Apollo, who are like getting a little bit cozy with each other. And she's like, you guys went AWOL last issue. You didn't tell us where you're going to be. So, new rule. No inner office romances. Okay? Final. And they all make their way back to the Eye of the Storm. And Jenny basically chews out Engineer, just like, ever since you swallowed that devolver like 4 issues ago, you've been acting like a real dick. And Engineer's like, I've been acting great. You suck. So at that point, the Shadow Lords arrive, aka specifically Harry. And it's just like, hey guys, Shadow Lords here. We've been thinking about taking Stormwatch in a change of direction. Where is everybody else? And on the final page, we see Midnighter and Apollo are talking, and they're just basically like, they can't keep us from loving each other. We could just get out of here. We could just leave. Using our powers, they wouldn't be able to track us down. And Midnighter's like, yeah, so I'm kind of a psychopath, in case you didn't know. And Stormwatch really adds some real structure to my life. So I think I kind of need to stay here at Stormwatch. So, yeah. And Apollo's like, oh, guess that's a no then. And then that's where we leave off the issue. So, I don't know why we're doing this. Here's what my theory is, at least, and we'll see if it results in such. I think that Demon Knights is close to wrapping up. It's got a few more issues on its run. I think they're going to end it by getting rid of Etrigan. I think that's going to be the end of the arc, and it's going to result in them being buried underground somehow. So be it. I think that this arc is mainly just for the purpose of they want Etrigan back in the DC universe and realize that they needed an explanation as to how he came back. But here's the thing. No, you don't. He could just be around. The spell could just fail at some point over the 1,000 years. Like, it's not even a thing. So, I don't know. This whole arc felt a little bit just for the purpose of getting Midnighter and Apollo not only closer, but then driving a wedge between them at the same time. I feel like the Etrigan thing was just whatever. Like, who even cares? It's not important. So, overall, the arc is a bit iffy. The issue itself is shaky in its own right, just because, like, characters are doing things and then immediately just saying, like, but I don't want to do that. Like, there was one point where Etrigan was saying, like, oh, yes, and you'll tell I'm quite the poet. I'm good at rhyming. But then during the part where he's recounting his history, he says how he was cursed to rhyme. So it's like, and that doesn't even fit with what we know in Demon Knights. That was just a thing of his rank of demon tended to rhyme. Like, overall, it's a mess of an issue. I don't dislike it in terms of it being a interesting story I think they're trying to tell, but I don't know. It's just a bit shaky overall. So overall, I'm going to give this like a 6. It's got some serious issues to it. And I don't quite feel like it has a feel of where it wants to go yet, but we'll see where we get to. Yeah, no, it's just nothing more to say. Just a little bit of a mess.